Welcome to the podcast recording of Middle East AI News Live for Thursday, October 12th, 2023, brought to you by Carrington Malin, marketing for an AI-first world. You're listening to part 2 of Middle East AI News Live, where we discuss the launch of a corporate AI accelerator by DIFC's Dubai AI and Web3 Campus.
I'll be moving on to another topic, which is more artificial intelligence. I'm going to be joined by Ewan MacLeod, founder of digital and digital transformation consultancy, New Era Digital Partners. Following a career in digital strategy, digital transformation, and innovation with international banks, Ewan now advises financial service providers, fintechs, and government agencies on digital transformation and delivering digital services. So a warm welcome to the Middle East AI News Live, Ewan.
Awesome. Thank you, Carrington. It's great to be here.
Brilliant. In June, DIFC announced ambitious plans to expand its Dubai AI and Web3 campus and attract more than 500 high-tech companies and raise $300 million in funds by 2028, which just sounds extraordinary. And and this week, the campus launched a new corporate AI accelerator to help corporations to adopt AI and embrace innovation. And I know that you're a big fan of what DIFC is doing here.
Yes.
What's your take on the new corporate accelerator, and where do you think that might fit in with private sector strategy on innovation and digital transformation?
I think it's a good signal and a good signpost of intent for DIFC, especially for the private sector, because I do think there is a strong risk that many, not just in UAE but across the region, aren't quite getting AI and what it's doing to business, to the marketplace around the world. And I think by signposting and saying, look, we are going to do this corporate accelerator, we invite you to participate. And, obviously the IFC has a lot of game. They have a lot of history in doing this kind of thing rather well in other segments such as fintech. And we could perhaps talk a little bit about that to get an idea, to get a flavor of what could be coming with AI.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a big fan of DIFC, and their FinTech Hive was really the first specialized startup program to be launched in the region. So they have credentials. They've been doing this for longer than anybody else, and they also seem to be quite methodical in what they do and well-researched, and these new announcements make perfect sense. And I don't think we talk enough about the part of the market that is not fully digitally transformed yet. Because we hear the case studies and we hear about the very biggest companies and their digital transformation efforts, but we know that there are a lot of companies that are much further behind.
Right, and I think this is the prompt. This is the signpost from DIFC saying, look, guys, talking to the private sector, they will be preaching to many of the converted in private sector who already get that this is quite transformational. But for those that perhaps look, I think if you spoke to any executive and said, look, AI, big thing, right? Every executive would say, obviously, we've yet to see in many cases what that will mean, but yes, it's a thing. We've got to be aware of it. Okay, but what are you doing about it? So I think this is a good move by DIFC and for the country of UAE to be saying, right, let's start the conversation. Let's get the dialogue going. Let's start playing with, and I mean playing in a positive commercial sense. Let's start testing and learning with AI, and let's make sure that we're bringing the private sector with us, and also we are supporting those in the private sector that are already way ahead. So I think it's a really good leveling up approach on AI and bringing the country along, creating that dialogue and making sure that the boardrooms and the exec management committee rooms are at least thinking actively about AI. I think that's very, very important. And as we were both highlighting there with fintech, there's 600 to 800 fintechs. I'm sure. I think I read 800 fintechs, but I can see about 689 I saw in the most recent release. But I'm sure it was about 800. But let's say 700. There we go. Right, fintechs operating at DIFC alone. Right, so that's excellent. That's a great ecosystem. Look what they've done with fintech. So one would imagine that this is something that they can achieve with AI as well.
Absolutely. And in fact, one of the fascinating things of this part of the world is in the UAE, the government has really led the charge on digital transformation.
Right.
And they've both in terms of thought leadership and actually getting things done,
And doing it. Yes.
and then provisioning new services out of leveraging data and AI, and that's inspired many private sector leaders to go and grab the bull by the horns and and run those programs themselves.
Yeah.
But there are obstacles if if you are in the private sector doing doing these things. That needs to fit to budget. You need to have the skills, lots of other things. So where do you see, from what this program, the corporate accelerator program, appealing? Is it going to appeal to the biggest companies who have problems in certain areas, or do you think it's going to be to those that are not driving programs as fast as they want and need help across the board?
I think it's really important that everyone, every institution, is thinking about AI in some context. Now, some of the bigger ones will already have a head off, a director off, and in fact, a lot of the director of AI, right? A lot of the headhunters I'm speaking to now have been saying, "Oh, do you know anyone? I'm looking for a head of AI." Or in some cases, a chief AI officer. So that's great for the bigger companies. At least dialogue, if not active development, is happening. But I think for some of the other companies, perhaps not operating exclusively in digital focused sectors, yeah, I think it's important that they need to be they should be evaluating this technology. They should be thinking about it actively. I would encourage that the executive management teams of any institution are spending, like, if you're meeting an hour a week, couldn't you take 10 minutes every second meeting, 10 minutes to sit down and think, what could we be doing, what should we be doing with AI? And Carrington, you mentioned skills. It's all very well saying, right, let's do something. Let's do AI. Let's be great. Okay, right. Well, now you need to go and get some people who know what they're talking about. And it's in many cases going to market and saying, I need someone with 10 years experience of generative AI, right? Okay, that's not going to happen. But I do have to highlight that UAE has had the Minister of AI since 2017, right? AI, I think a lot of us are very focused on AI now, as of basically with generative AI, with ChatGPT and OpenAI releasing their services last year. I think that caught the imagination and really got into people's sphere of thoughts on AI. People began to really embrace and think about it proactively. But this has been going on. A lot of AI has been happening for quite a while. A lot of businesses have been really benefiting it for quite a while.
True.
But the key issue here is, where are you going to get that talent? Because I remember back in 2017, one of the institutions I was working with, that talent was incredibly expensive then, right? But the outcomes were astonishing. That you could create. That was back in 2017, 2018. So now with this next generation of technology, there's a lot of possibility, but how many people are there out there with the skills you need? Right. So there's one thing having the AI or some degree of skills in understanding and using and exploiting data for benefit. Right. That's one thing. Then the other aspect is, okay, how do you speak? Right. How do you talk? How do you transform the actual activity of creating the technology and harnessing it is one thing, Carrington, right? But then explaining that, integrating it into the business process, making sure the business can embrace and adopt it, that's another thing. These are quite challenging skills required.
Well, if you read the UAE press over the last few months, you'll see that variously 80%, 85%, 90, 95% of organizations in the UAE plan to embrace AI and see it's pivotal to their future. But if you actually scratch beneath the surface, there's quite a few that are still yet to put programs in place and yet to nominate people to drive those programs and yet to hire people who might drive those programs as well.
Right.
So where do you think things like this corporate AI accelerator will be able to add value to those companies? And after this, I'd like to come on to the startup angle and how that might work with DIFC's ecosystem, because that looks really promising.
Well, see, the interesting thing, by effectively having DIFC or other government entities saying, right, we're doing this, and turning and looking expectantly at the private sector, what that does, and I've been in the meetings where the CEO receives the invitation from the regulator, the government, the DIFC, right? And he goes, "Oh, well, we're going to have to do this. We've been invited," right? So just that step of saying, "Hey guys, hi everyone, think we should do this. Are you in?" Right? And there is an expectation that many of the biggest institutions, in certainly those that have some degree of state related ownership, you've got to play along, right? Now what that does is that generates a conversation in those companies. Okay, it means budget is assigned, whether that's through gritted teeth, "Oh, we have to do this," right? Or because, actually, look, we've been meaning to do this anyway. Of course, we've been reading the headlines. So thank you for the excuse. Thank you for the reminder. Thank you for the prompt. So that's another benefit of this. But really, for those institutions whose management teams were not thinking about AI, this is a great that AI accelerator is a great way of really just prompting the question. And I think it's easy to say, "Ha ha, why were you not thinking about AI?" We've got to remember that in these boardrooms and these exec meetings, you've got to worry about the day job, the day-to-day reality of running business. So most individuals, it's not, they're not at fault for looking inwards, right? So this is a great opportunity to say, hey guys, look, we're going to try this. So even those that don't wish to or are unable to perform, to play along and participate in the accelerator, that's okay, because being able to follow the output of it, the activity, I think will be educational, and it's the conversations that come from it, Carrington, are very, very helpful.
Agreed. I think also the UAE government at many levels, at federal level, at local emirate level, have done a fantastic job in prompting that conversation. But this doesn't happen. This hasn't happened in isolation. The Dubai AI and Web3 Campus is actually focused on startups, on entrepreneurs, and on growing successful high-tech companies. And so the reason for DIFC's launch of the corporate accelerator this week is also to provide an opportunity for the startups that are within the AI and Web3 campus.
Right, and look, this is really important as well, because you picture the 2 or 3 guys and girls who have left their day jobs and they've managed to get a little bit of investment, and they've got to either they have an idea or they have product market fit, and they're sitting there and they're looking to take those dialogues with various different companies. Wouldn't it be great if we could do this with this supermarket chain? Wouldn't it be great if we could do this for this bank? Oh wait, well, how do we find someone? How do we test? How do we how do we see if our ideas and if our proof of concepts or our mock-ups, how is it going to work in the real world, and who do we speak to? And that's where having that organized process of saying, please, come along. We're going to do an accelerator now. I think by now, most of us have some degree of understanding on how an accelerator works. You typically have demo days, pitch days, and so on. So you're getting that networking happening. So for those startups, it's crucial they get exposure to the markets as much as possible, and it's really beneficial. Sometimes it's quite horrific for both parties, difficult when you've got a startup in the room and you've got a big corporate in the room. The conversations can initially be rather incompatible. I remember one startup I was speaking to, they were saying, "You've got lots of money and we need some." Literally, that was their opening line. Whereas often it's yes, there is budget, but it's not necessarily a pile of cash sitting there for a startup. But we have 100 different problems we're trying to fix.
I think
have you got something that will fix that? That's where you need that flexibility and that dialogue, because often you'll find the startup is doing something that they thought was important. Actually, that might not be it might be a slightly different approach, but that's that the corporate would want. But you take those, by taking those dialogues, you create these business models, you create these proof of concepts that you get to product market fit so much faster. So I think it's the right move, and I think it's a very exciting one as well.
Yeah, me too. And for any AI startup, one of the biggest challenges is finding that right person to talk to, because it needs to be the right organization, needs to be the right person. And if you get a match, then great things are possible, because you've got somebody who will champion what you're doing and sell the benefits and explore and give you the feedback and ideas you need to develop the product. And if you get stuck in the, tomorrow, we're thinking about it, and too many of those conversations, then you're just going to spin your wheels and frankly run out of money.
This is the benefit, Carl, of this kind of approach, right? Where look, I'm imagining, the reality of a CEO or exec team getting a note, or an invitation, saying, "Hey, would you be interested in, please come along and participate." So someone in the exec team needs to appoint, if they don't already have someone looking at startup, looking at accelerators, looking at innovation, and looking at AI, they need to appoint someone, whether they're an expert or not. You come here, right? You're now our person in this accelerator. So that's really good, because if that person didn't exist, or that position didn't exist before, now it does. So now that startup does actually have someone, whether they're expert or interested or not, that at least they've got someone who's been asked by the exec team, please involve yourself, represent us in this accelerator. That's great, because those conversations can be so much more productive, Carrington, than before. I say before, meaning if you just leave things to their natural ends, some startups will eventually find their way through to the corporates. But by creating this function, I think you can get a lot more. Well, I was going to say, okay, you can accelerate that activity.
Yes, that's what they're for.
There we go.
I think programs like this, because there are a number of very well-run programs in the region, it's also that vote of confidence that enterprises get from knowing that their startup, might have just come into existence. They might have a great idea, but it's also got a little bit of it's been filtered out to an extent, and it's in an ecosystem that has a good reputation. And therefore, I'm going to take the next step and find out, if we can go anywhere with that. Because for a lot of the large organizations out there, I mean, there are an awful lot of startups around these days, and we don't want to be beholden to the plans of half a dozen startups. We want to make sure we make our goals and make the progress that we need to.
That's front of mind, right? That's why the company typically exists, is to forward its own mission. The challenge can be when you've got startups approaching you who there is a level of hygiene, corporate hygiene, that has not been achieved. So one of the benefits of an accelerator is, typically speaking, you'll have individuals involved in that, helping steer companies, by saying, look, what have you thought about your legal contracts? Have you thought about where you store your data? Right? Have you thought about how you treat the data? Right? Have you thought about how you're going to engage with corporates? Right? Because you might want to think about X and Y. So in many cases, having been in the position where I was the corporate, I was representing the corporate into the startup world, I would often prefer those that had gone through that process, that accelerator or that boot camp, because first of all, they had their pitch honed, because they've had to do it so many times, right? So when I say, what is it you do, they can tell me in 30 seconds. That's really useful. Then when I say, look, what's the business model, they know whether I agree with it or not, or whether it's compatible. That doesn't matter. The key is they've got an answer, Carrington. That's important, right? So there's a benefit to having gone through that process for the startup, because it helps speed up.
It brings their language much closer to sort of enterprise technology speak.
Yes, exactly. Yes. Well, just look, it's just preparing, being ready. So and having, so if a startup is just sitting in an office in the middle of UAE, that's okay, right? But you run the risk of getting that meeting with that corporate and then ruining it by saying, "Oh yes, it costs a gazillion, please." And just pay me now, right? So you may not have, if you haven't been exposed to some really good advice from some of the people that will be participating in that accelerator, you kind of be at a disadvantage. So I think it's a good idea to be bringing the ecosystem together and then creating a level of hygiene amongst all of them.
And there's some great incentives at DIFC's Dubai AI and Web3 Campus at the moment. They announced short while ago that they were offering 90% subsidy on company registrations for qualifying startups. And if you're a startup, that actually makes a real difference.
It really does, right? And then there's the actual incentives, and then there's a soft incentive, the soft realities, right? So 90% discount is really, really cool, really, really good. I put my company at DIFC. I find it incredibly efficient, right? But a 90% discount is even better, right? Or the softer opportunities, right? The ecosystem you're mixing in, the connections that can be made, right? The acceleration of your business, I don't mean just in the accelerator, but by being in that community, by making connections with other like-minded individuals who are there to also help and push you.
It's the ecosystem, isn't it? It's the ecosystem.
Really powerful, Carrington.
Well, I think we need to round off now because we're coming to the end. Any parting words, advice, thoughts on what DIFC is doing and AI and fintech in general?
I think what AI DIFC is doing, I think is absolutely fantastic. I think it's really exciting. I'm looking forward to seeing the output from that. And if you are a startup, I think the opportunity, or a corporate, by the way, I think the opportunity to participate in the accelerator could be really, really valuable. I'm looking forward to seeing the output of that. And then for those that perhaps, I mean, this is obviously an AI focused conversation. For those listening along that perhaps maybe haven't yet dabbled with it, played with it, I would strongly recommend getting involved. Play, test, and learn with the whole technology, and follow along with the updates that Carrington, that you're producing, Carrington, which I think are really valuable.
Thank you very much. Very nice plug. Thank you, Ewan.
Oh, welcome.
So thank you very much for making the time to join us and for sharing your views and your insights. Lots to talk about. So much to talk about.
Indeed. Watch this space. Thank you, Carrington.
I've been talking to Ewan MacLeod, who's founder of digital transformation consultancy New Era Digital Partners, and you'll find them on LinkedIn. New Era Digital Partners. That's all we've got time for.
You've been listening to a recording of Middle East AI News Live for Thursday, October 12th, 2023, brought to you by Carrington Malin. Thanks for listening.